They told me they'd have me arrested for planting tulips. Not drugs, not explosives tulips. And the wild part? They were serious. I remember standing there in my front yard, holding the ridiculous citation letter, thinking, is this real life or a deleted scene from a reality show? The HOA patrol guy, a balding man with sunglasses too big for his face, was already walking away like he had just delivered justice. You are in violation of Section 4A, non-compliant floral aesthetics, the letter read. Remove all non-neutral colored flowers within 48 hours or face legal consequences. I laughed out loud because who in their right mind threatens someone with arrest over the color pink? The thing is, they didn't know who I was. I had just moved back to my childhood home after graduating from college, ready to spend the summer recharging before heading off to my new job. This house had been in my family for decades. I grew up on this street, rode my bike on this exact sidewalk, and knew every crack on the driveway by heart. But in the few years I was away, something changed. The neighborhood had become militarized. And the woman leading the charge? Karen. No, that's not a nickname. Her real name is Karen. Karen, president of the HOA, defender of beige color palettes, and self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac. The first time I saw her in person was the day after the tulip citation. I was walking out to my mailbox when she pulled up in her golf carties. She actually drives a golf cart around the neighborhood and stopped dramatically at the end of my driveway. She wore a wide-brimmed sun hat, giant pearls that clacked every time she moved her head, and the most judgmental expression I've ever seen. Eva, she said, pronouncing it like Ava for some reason. We take our standards very seriously around here. This is a community of order, not chaos. Your flower choices, they upset the visual harmony. I blinked. They are just tulips. Her eyes narrowed. They are too aggressive. I wanted to laugh again, but something in her tone stopped me. It wasn't just about flowers. This woman thrived on control, the kind of person who probably alphabetizes her spices and files noise complaints if a child laughs too loudly. Judging by the way she scanned my lawn like a general surveying a battlefield, I could tell this was far from over. What she didn't know was that I wasn't the kind of girl who backs down, not anymore. More importantly, she had no clue that my mother was none other than Maya Cynthia Blake. But I wasn't going to play that card just yet. I wanted to see just how far she was willing to go. Spoiler alert, she went too far. By the end of the first week, I had received 2 more citations. One for using a non-compliant garden hose because it was bright orange, and another for unauthorized front porch seating. Apparently, my wooden swing wasn't approved by the HOA's official style guide. Yes, they have a style guide. It's 82 pages long and includes acceptable mailbox fonts. I kid you not. I started documenting everything. Every letter, every ridiculous rule, every passive-aggressive note taped to my door. At night, I'd scroll through the neighborhood's online forum, reading complaint threads like they were episodes of a soap opera. Karen was in all of them, and she was terrifying. My neighbors had all but given up. One man whispered to me at the community pool, she fined me for planting dwarf sunflowers. Said they looked too enthusiastic. Another lady said Karen once yelled at her child for sidewalk chalk art. The worst part? Everyone was afraid of her. They called her the enforcer behind her back. HOA board meetings were basically scripted performances with Karen pulling all the strings. I decided I wasn't going to be another puppet. So, I did the unthinkable. I replanted the tulips. Not just pink. I went full rainbow bright reds, electric purples, even some experimental striped ones I picked up from a boutique garden shop downtown. Then, I added little fairy lights around the garden bed. It looked like something out of a magical forest, whimsical, beautiful, and apparently illegal. That night, my Ring camera caught someone sneaking onto my lawn and taking photos. Karen, in a hoodie, at 11:42 p.m. The next morning, I received a fine of $500 daily for continued floral noncompliance. The letter claimed I was actively undermining the HOA standards and creating visual chaos that threatened neighborhood unity. That's when I realized this wasn't about flowers. This was about power, and I had just declared war. I didn't tell my mom, not yet. I wanted to handle this myself. Besides, my mother would have rolled in with full government force if she knew someone was threatening me with arrest over landscaping choices. I wanted Karen to keep underestimating me. I wanted her to think I was just some clueless 20-something who didn't know the rules. Let her dig her own grave. I was just getting started. The funniest part? My TikTok account, which I had originally created to post food reviews, suddenly blew up. I started posting clips of Karen's antics, HOA letters, and dramatic reenactments of her complaints. People were hooked. The HOA Karen saga became a series, and within days, I had over 100,000 followers begging for updates. The comments were pure gold. This woman needs a Netflix documentary. Blink twice if Karen is holding your tulips hostage. The support was overwhelming and also strategic. Now, I had the internet on my side. Meanwhile, Karen escalated. She sent out an HOA-wide email calling me a repeat offender and accusing me of leading a neighborhood rebellion. She even claimed my lights attracted dangerous insects and were a threat to public health. At this point, even the police were getting involved, sort of. A couple of officers knocked on my door after another neighbor called in a disturbance. They took one look at my lawn, saw the flowers and fairy lights, and just said, "This is beautiful." I offered them lemonade. They stayed for 10 minutes. But Karen didn't back down. She doubled down. She started walking her dog past my house every morning, stopping to take notes. I caught her measuring my grass height. She reported me for overly decorative doormats. And then, the ultimate threat, a letter that read in bold red ink, "Continued violations will result in legal action, including citizen's arrest if necessary." That's when I knew this woman wasn't just unhinged. She was about to get humiliated. Because if she tried to arrest me, she'd be trying to arrest the mayor's daughter. And the fallout? Oh, it was going to be spectacular. By the time the second week rolled around, my house had become a silent battleground. On the surface, it looked like just another suburban home with an overly cheerful garden. But beneath the pretty petals and twinkling fairy lights, a full-blown psychological war was raging between me and Karen. What Karen didn't realize was that every move she made was being documented, not just by me, but now by an entire online audience invested in the HOA drama saga. My phone didn't stop buzzing. People were begging for updates. Every time I posted a new clip, my views doubled. Still, I kept my identity low-key. No one outside the neighborhood knew who I really was, and more importantly, Karen still had no idea. She tried to act like she was in charge. Every morning at exactly 7:06 a.m., she'd roll past my house in that ridiculous golf cart of hers, clipboard in hand, her tiny fluffy dog perched like a furry turret beside her. I swear the dog wore matching sunglasses. She'd stop at the edge of my lawn, scribble something furiously, then zoom off like she had just witnessed a felony. I watched her from the living room window, coffee in hand, amused but also waiting because I knew something had to break soon. What I didn't expect was the depth of the madness she had built. I discovered that Karen had an actual network. I called them the Porch Patrol, a group of elderly residents who had clearly surrendered their golden years to the art of neighborhood surveillance. There was Binocular Barbara, who sat on her porch and pretended to read a newspaper while spying through oversized lenses. There was Tom the Tattler, who somehow managed to report everything from misplaced trash bins to unauthorized garden gnomes. And let's not forget Whispering Greg, a sweet man who once tried to warn me, but got scared halfway through his sentence and ran back inside like he had betrayed the secret society. It was Greg who first hinted at the secret HOA rulebook. I had received yet another fine, this time for hosting a disruptive gathering, which was just my cousin and I eating popsicles on the front steps while playing music on low volume. Greg walked by, hesitated, and said without making eye contact, "They have other rules. Not in the book. She keeps them separate." Then he speed-walked away like he had just revealed classified information. I was intrigued. Secret rules? Hidden clauses? It sounded like a treasure hunt led by a petty dictator. So, I did what any curious 20-something would do. I infiltrated. There was an upcoming HOA meeting, residents only. Luckily, Karen didn't know every face in the neighborhood. My friend Michelle, who lived 2 blocks away, let me borrow her HOA badge. I tied my hair up, threw on glasses, wore a mask just in case, and walked into the meeting like I belonged. The community center's side hall was dimly lit and full of folding chairs. Karen stood at the front like she was about to deliver a TED Talk on power and control. The meeting started with a roll call, some mumbled approval of last month's minutes, and then straight into the complaints section. That's when things got weird. Karen introduced something called the Enhanced Aesthetic Enforcement List. It wasn't in any official handbook. This was her personal collection of additional rules. Flip-flops after 6 p.m. were forbidden. Wind chimes with more than 5 tubes were considered sonic clutter. Plastic flamingos, even if historically themed, were banned. Apparently, any outdoor furniture not wooden or in muted tones was a violation. My jaw nearly dropped. This woman had created her own underground law system, and no one questioned her. The board members nodded along like hypnotized chickens. One man, Frank, tried to ask about the legality of the extra fines, but Karen shut him down with a cold stare and said, "This community thrives on structure, Frank. If you can't handle that, perhaps you'd be happier elsewhere." The room went silent. Frank stared at his feet. I felt the chill myself. I left that meeting with more questions than answers, but I also had a plan. Karen was ruling through fear. The board wasn't her council, they were her captives. If I could shake that control, maybe I could dismantle her rule. So, I started poking the bear. Not in big ways, not yet, but small things. I replaced the fairy lights with brighter ones. I put a giant sunflower welcome mat on my porch that said, "Good vibes only." I placed a colorful gnome named Gerald near the flower bed. Every time I did something wrong, I posted it online. The internet was having a field day. My TikTok videos were now being stitched by influencers. One lawyer even offered to represent me pro bono just because he wanted to take down a tyrannical HOA president. The pressure was mounting, and Karen was feeling it. She started making mistakes. First, she sent out a community-wide email with my full name and alleged history of noncompliance. A few residents emailed back defending me. That had never happened before. Then she tried to introduce a new rule banning all social media mentions of the HOA. That backfired too. Someone leaked the email thread to a local journalist, and suddenly the story was on a neighborhood blog. But I wasn't satisfied with digital victories. I wanted Karen to feel the shift in power in real life. So, I made my first big move. I hosted a flower freedom barbecue in my front yard. It wasn't massive, just a few neighbors, some lawn chairs, and a lot of food. I made sure every item broke a rule. Bright picnic blankets, loud loofahs, a flamingo-shaped ice bucket. I even had wind chimes with 7 tubes hanging from the porch. Predictably, Karen arrived in full fury. She didn't walk up. She stormed. Her golf cart screeched to a halt like it was performing in an action movie. She marched right up to me and said, "This is a direct violation of community code." I smiled and handed her a plate of ribs. She slapped it out of my hand. The music stopped. Everyone froze. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "We know people in high places." And that's when I knew she really had no clue who she was messing with. She thought she was the big boss, the final authority. She didn't know that the only person in the city with more pull than her was my mother. I didn't reveal it yet, not in that moment, because this war, it was still heating up, and the best part was coming soon. Let her keep talking about her high places. I was about to take her way, way higher. I woke up to the sound of my doorbell ringing in a frantic rhythm, like someone was trying to send an SOS through the chimes. Still half asleep, I stumbled to the door in my pajamas and opened it to find a man holding a clipboard and 2 others standing behind him wearing matching neon orange vests. They looked like a parody of security guards, except one of them was chewing gum like he was on break from a fast food shift. The man with the clipboard cleared his throat and said in a tone that tried to sound official, "Eva Blake, you are in violation of HOA Regulation 9B and have failed to comply with repeated warnings. You are hereby subject to a citizen's arrest, effective immediately." For a moment, I just stared at them. I thought maybe I was being pranked. Maybe one of my TikTok followers sent some actors to create more content. But then I saw Karen standing on the sidewalk across the street, arms folded, wearing a smug expression and holding her phone, already recording. They were serious. The man with the clipboard stepped forward. "You need to come with us." I blinked. "Come where? To the HOA dungeon? Are you out of your mind?" The chewing gum guy looked uncomfortable, but the other vest wearer stepped forward, puffing up his chest. "We're authorized to detain you for noncompliance." I looked over at Karen. She gave me a little wave. I took a deep breath, stepped outside, and shut the door behind me. "Touch me," I said calmly, "and I promise you'll regret it." That made them pause. I pulled out my phone and started recording too. "Go ahead. Tell the camera again what you're trying to do." "Citizen's arrest? Over what exactly? Flowers? Fairy lights? A garden gnome?" The guy with the clipboard hesitated. The one with puffed up pride stepped back slightly. Karen started walking over. Eva, you've left us no choice. Your disregard for community standards has disrupted the harmony of this neighborhood. This is what happens when people think they're above the law. I was so tempted to laugh. I didn't, but my smile said enough. Neighbors had started to gather, drawn out by the drama. Phones were out. Cameras were rolling. And just like that, Karen's big moment turned into a circus. The gum chewer mumbled, "I don't think we can actually arrest her," but Karen ignored him. The tension was thick. Then, almost as if the universe had perfect comedic timing, a police car rolled up, not rushing, just cruising casually, lights off, windows down. Two officers stepped out, both looking a little too familiar with this neighborhood. One of them sighed the moment he saw Karen. "We got another call from this address. What's going on this time?" Karen launched into her prepared speech, talking about how I was a threat to the peace and how she had the authority to make a citizen's arrest due to repeated code violations. The officer held up a hand, visibly tired. "Ma'am, this is the third time this month we've talked about this. You can't just arrest people over flower colors." "But she's actively mocking our regulations," Karen snapped. "She's defying the structure that holds this community together." The officer turned to me. "Are you doing anything dangerous or illegal?" I shook my head. "Just planting tulips and eating barbecue." He turned back to Karen. "This is not a criminal matter. And if you or anyone here touches her without cause, you're the one who's going to end up in the back of our car." That shut everyone up. The clipboard guy quietly stepped backward. The puffed-up one disappeared completely, like he had evaporated. Karen's face twisted into something between a grimace and a confused pout. And that's when I decided the moment had finally come. I turned to the crowd of neighbors. I turned to Karen. I turned to the cops. And then I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You keep threatening me with arrests. You act like you run this town, but you've been barking up the wrong tree." Karen narrowed her eyes. "What are you talking about?" I smiled. "My name is Eva Blake, daughter of Maya Cynthia Blake." The silence was immediate. Even the birds stopped chirping. Karen's expression collapsed into something resembling sheer panic. The officer raised an eyebrow. "You're the mayor's daughter?" I nodded. "Yep. And I've been playing along because I wanted to see how far she'd go. I guess now we all know." Karen looked like she was about to pass out. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. The neighbors who had been scared to stand up to her started whispering to each other. One of them even laughed. The officer cleared his throat and said to Karen, "Maybe it's time you take a break from neighborhood law enforcement." She didn't respond. She just stood there, frozen, as her little kingdom of petty power began to crumble. I thanked the officers and walked back toward my house. The clipboard guy muttered an apology before jogging away. Karen finally managed to say something, though her voice was barely audible. "You tricked me." I turned around. "No, Karen. You tricked yourself. You thought you could bully anyone you wanted without consequences. Turns out, consequences were tulips and no people in actual high places." I went inside and closed the door behind me, but the adrenaline still buzzed in my veins. I looked at my phone. The video was still recording. Perfect audio, crystal clear video, every ridiculous moment captured. I uploaded it within minutes. The views started pouring in. My followers were losing their minds. Comments flooded in. "This is better than Netflix." That plot twist, though. I can't breathe. She said citizen's arrest. Karen didn't show up the next morning or the morning after that. Her golf cart was parked, unmoving, like a monument to her downfall. The HOA went quiet. For the first time in weeks, there were no new fines taped to my door. The neighborhood exhaled. People started waving at each other again. Someone even put a flamingo in their yard, just to test the waters. And I wasn't done, not even close. I had only just revealed my identity. Now it was time to use it. Karen had tried to bring the law down on me, but I had access to actual law. Permits, legal language, political pressure. I was about to take this battle from petty to official. If she thought tulips were aggressive, wait till she saw what a legal community garden permit with city backing could do. The story was spreading. Journalists were reaching out. Other people from across the country began sharing their own HOA horror stories under the tag HOA Karen Enforcer. I had unknowingly started a movement. People were sick of tyrannical neighborhood rulers, and I had just exposed the poster child. But Karen wasn't going to go down quietly. Not her. I knew she was plotting something. I could see it in the way her blinds twitched when I walked past, The way her car didn't move, but her porch light flickered on late at night. She was regrouping, planning her next move. But this time, I wasn't just reacting. I was going to strike first. Because now I had the one thing she never saw coming. Power. Real, undeniable, city-level power. And I was going to use it to turn her entire little empire upside down. The silence from Karen's house was louder than her usual complaints. It had been 3 days since the citizens' arrest disaster, and the queen of neighborhood order had vanished into her fortress of pillows and HOA manuals. Her golf cart sat parked at an odd angle in her driveway, like it had been abandoned mid-mission. The neighborhood, once tense and tightly wound, was starting to breathe again. People who had once whispered in fear were now stopping to chat openly on sidewalks. Someone had even installed a pink lawn flamingo 2 houses down. Another neighbor strung up rainbow-colored string lights and winked at me when I walked by. The spell Karen had cast on the entire street was breaking. But I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat. She was wounded, yes, humiliated even, but someone like her didn't disappear quietly. She was brewing something behind those curtains. And that's why I decided to strike before she could recover. No more waiting, no more subtle rebellion. It was time for an official, legally sanctioned, brightly colored counterattack. I drove straight to City Hall, walked past security with confidence, and requested a special use landscaping permit. Not just any permit, a community garden permit with a twist. Thanks to my last name, the clerk at the desk didn't give me the usual runaround. I explained what I wanted: a publicly accessible community garden to promote neighborhood wellness and unity, located on my front lawn. I even had a name for it: the Harmony Garden. The irony made me smile. The permit wasn't just approved, it was fast-tracked. I walked out of that office with a city-stamped document that gave me the legal right to invite anyone I wanted onto my lawn at any hour to admire or contribute to the garden. According to the law, HOA restrictions could not override city-level community initiatives. Karen's worst nightmare had just been notarized. I went straight to work. I put up a beautiful wooden sign at the edge of my yard that read Harmony Garden, open to all. Beneath it, I placed a small box of free seeds and little garden tools for kids. I put out benches, invited local kids to paint decorative rocks, and posted flyers for weekend flower planting sessions. Within 2 days, my front yard looked like a botanical celebration, and every single inch of it was legally protected. Karen couldn't say a word, but she tried. She showed up on the 3rd morning, her face pale and her mouth set in a tight line. She stood at the edge of my property, staring at the benches, the colorful flowers, the free lemonade Saturdays sign I had posted next to the gnome. I was watering the marigolds when she finally spoke. "You think this is clever?" she asked, her voice flat. "This is chaos disguised as kindness." I turned off the hose and walked toward her, holding the laminated permit like a trophy. "No, Karen, this is called community. Something you've been strangling for years." She reached for the paper, but I pulled it back. "Oh, and by the way, any attempt to interfere with a city-licensed initiative is considered obstruction. You might want to read up on that." She didn't say anything. She just turned around and walked back to her house. The door slammed. I wasn't sure if she was going to scream or faint. Either way, she was trapped. Her rules had no power here. Her threats were useless, and the neighborhood knew it. The next few days were incredible. Families I'd never even spoken to started showing up. People brought their own plants, shared gardening tips, and sat on the benches chatting like they hadn't in years. One retired teacher offered to start a kids' nature class every Saturday morning. Someone even donated a bird bath. The energy on the block had shifted completely. It was alive, colorful, and warm, the exact opposite of what Karen had spent years trying to enforce. Then came the cherry on top. A local news crew showed up after seeing my TikTok video about the garden and the permit. They interviewed me right there on the lawn, capturing shots of kids painting rocks and neighbors sipping lemonade. I gave them the full story, from the tulips to the citizens' arrest to the grand reveal. I made sure to mention how the garden was approved by the mayor's office. The segment aired that evening under the title From Floral Finds to Community Freedom, One Resident's Battle Against HOA Overreach. The moment Karen's face flashed on screen during the dramatized reenactment of the arrest scene, I knew it was game over for her. But the real blow came during the next HOA meeting. I didn't attend. I didn't need to. The board had been under pressure for weeks. Multiple residents had started raising concerns about Karen's leadership, and the failed arrest attempt had only made things worse. They tried to keep the meeting quiet, but word spread fast. Voices were raised. One board member, the same guy who used to cower during roll calls, stood up and called for a vote of no confidence. According to what I heard later, Karen tried to interrupt, but was shouted down by 3 people at once. A heated argument broke out. Someone tossed a fruit tray. Karen screamed that she was being sabotaged by flower anarchists. She was voted out 6-1. She stormed out mid-meeting, knocking over a chair, her signature pearls swinging wildly as she made her exit. Her golf cart peeled off into the distance like she was driving into exile. Just like that, Karen was no longer HOA president. Her reign of pastel tyranny had officially ended. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Someone tied a balloon to my mailbox that said Queen of Tulips. I received a handwritten thank you card from an elderly couple I'd never met, thanking me for bringing peace and joy back to the block. Even the mailman smiled more. The HOA board sent out a revised guideline memo, apologizing for past oversteps and announcing new leadership elections. They also formally acknowledged Harmony Garden as a community partner project. But the best moment came that afternoon when I spotted Karen at the local dollar store. She was restocking shelves in aisle 3, wearing a name tag that said Karen, Manager. I wasn't sure if it was a typo or a rebrand. I walked by slowly, pushing a cart with absolutely nothing in it, just to savor the moment. She spotted me. Her mouth opened slightly, like she wanted to say something, but I just smiled, picked up a pack of gum, and walked away without saying a word. The look on her face was priceless. But even as everything seemed to settle, something kept nagging at me, a flicker of suspicion, a quiet knowing that someone like Karen wouldn't stay quiet for long. That night, as I was sorting through mail, I found an unmarked envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single note. It said, in messy handwriting, "You think it's over? It's not. K." I stared at the paper for a long time. It wasn't surprising. It wasn't even that threatening. But it was enough to tell me this wasn't the end, not yet. Karen was still out there, and I had a feeling she had one last move left to play. Let her try. I had the garden, the permit, and the mayor on speed dial. And now, I had the entire neighborhood behind me. Spring melted into summer, and my neighborhood bloomed in more ways than one. What started as a tulip-fueled rebellion had become a full-blown community revival. The air was different, lighter, happier. Kids rode bikes freely without worrying about silent glares from porch patrols. Neighbors waved at each other without suspicion. Laughter came back. Lawn chairs reappeared. And right in the heart of it all was the Harmony Garden, overflowing with life, color, and the subtle aroma of sweet justice. I watered the flowers every morning, often greeted by someone new stopping by to drop off seedlings or chat about what the HOA used to be like before Karen took over. It felt like we'd been released from some bizarre suburban dictatorship, and no one was in a rush to go back. The new HOA board moved quickly. They sent out a revised rulebook, stripping away the ridiculous Karen-invented regulations and replacing them with guidelines that actually made sense. No more fines for doormats that were too cheerful. No more limitations on wind chimes, flower colors, or porch swing configurations. One of the board members even came to me personally and asked if I'd consider joining the HOA. At first, I laughed. Me? The girl who started a flower-fueled civil war? But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If someone like me was inside, it meant someone was watching, someone who understood the importance of not taking a neighborhood hostage over nonsense. So I said yes. At the next meeting, I was voted in as vice president of the HOA. No one opposed. A few even clapped. I walked into that meeting room, the same one where Karen had once ruled with glares and threats, and sat down at the front table with a quiet smile. It was surreal. We talked about real issues, things that mattered: parking, noise ordinances, garden funding, and even a block party. Not a single discussion about the emotional tone of flower beds. Progress. Meanwhile, the Harmony Garden became a kind of symbol. Local schools asked if students could do class projects there. A neighborhood book club began hosting reading nights on the benches. A local artist painted a mural on my fence with the words "Grow Wild" surrounded by vines and blossoms. It became more than just my yard. It became a shared space, a breathing heart in a place that had once felt suffocating. Karen, however, remained a ghost. After the dollar store sighting, she seemed to vanish. Her house was still there, of course. The windows stayed closed, the blinds drawn. Occasionally, I'd see a flicker of movement inside, but no more golf cart rides, no more lectures. Still, I didn't trust the silence. The envelope she'd left me was a quiet promise, and I wasn't naive enough to think she'd simply let everything go. People like Karen don't fade, they regroup. And she did, just not the way I expected. A few weeks after I joined the HOA board, we received a formal complaint letter. It came from a law office. Apparently, Karen had hired a lawyer to challenge her removal from the board, claiming it was unconstitutional under HOA bylaws. She also accused the current board of mob-like behavior and emotional terrorism through Flora. I read the letter aloud during a meeting and had to stop twice to keep from laughing. The phrase, weaponized tulips, was actually written in legal ink. It would have been funny if it wasn't so Karen. The board didn't take the bait. We had done everything by the book. Transparent voting, clear majority, no foul play. We sent back a formal response rejecting her claims. But the move made something clear. Karen still thought she had a shot. So, I doubled down. I proposed a new community initiative, the Freedom Front Lawn Project. We would offer small grants to homeowners who wanted to beautify their lawn with creative flair, flowers, decor, art, whatever made them happy. The only rule: no beige gardens. The proposal passed unanimously. Soon, flamingos were popping up all over the place, hand-painted signs, solar-powered mushrooms. One house put up a garden archway with vines. The neighborhood had transformed from a row of identical lawns into a quirky, vibrant street full of personality. Every single decorative item felt like a polite middle finger to Karen's old regime. It was glorious. Then, just when I thought she might finally disappear for good, another letter arrived. This one wasn't from a lawyer. It was handwritten. No name, just a return address. Karen. The letter was short, only 2 lines. Congratulations on your victory. Just remember, peace is temporary. Order always returns. I didn't know whether to laugh, roll my eyes, or call someone to check on her. Instead, I folded the letter and tucked it in the back of my garden journal, a strange little trophy. But I wasn't worried. Because order hadn't disappeared, we hadn't chosen chaos. We had chosen community. What Karen never understood was that real order doesn't come from control. It comes from connection, from people feeling safe and free and respected. That's something no list of rules or HOA handbook can force into being. It has to grow, like a garden. It needs sunlight and room to breathe. Weeks passed. The Harmony Garden flourished. So did the street. Our block party was a hit. Kids ran through sprinklers. Neighbors danced. Someone made the bold choice to serve sushi on a driveway table. No one got fined. No one complained. I stood at the edge of my lawn, watching it all unfold, and felt something I hadn't in a long time: peace. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the flowers cast long, golden shadows, I sat on my porch swing, sipping iced tea. My phone buzzed with a new TikTok comment. Someone had binge-watched the entire HOA Karen saga and wanted a part 2. I smiled. Part 2? Maybe. But for now, the villain had been dethroned, the town had been healed, and the mayor's daughter was exactly where she needed to be. Just as I was about to go inside, I spotted something on the corner of my porch. An envelope. Another one. I picked it up slowly. Same handwriting. Inside was a small note and a blurry photo. The note read, "You've won for now. But I've been studying, learning, watching. You don't know who you've really challenged." Signed, K. The photo was of me watering the garden from 2 days ago, clearly taken from a distance, probably through a crack in her blinds. I stared at it for a long moment, then let out a slow laugh. Of course, Karen's comeback wouldn't be loud. It would be calculated. She wasn't gone, just waiting. Let her wait. Because next time she tried anything, she wouldn't just be dealing with flowers or fines. She'd be dealing with a girl who took down an empire with a tulip and turned a lawn into a legend.